And we're live. And I guess at this point, we just have some kind of host rotation going. So 3-day weekend, draft weekend. So I'm the host today. I'm AJ Herschel, also known as the Kid. And we already know we are here with the man, the myth, the legend, Judahbuddha, and the absolute stud. It's Jared! The RotoHackers, your unauthorized reporters of fantasy football news and information, recapping day 1 and 2 of the draft, because after that, we don't really know anybody's names unless they came out of Georgia. So, gentlemen, how you doing? Let's just go ahead and get into this. I know, Jared, you'd brought some topics for us. Where do we start?
Well, as for how we're doing, I'm great because I loved the Colts draft last night, and everybody else
so excited.
I was so excited, and everybody else loved the Colts draft too. The Colts beat writers, just independent analysts, just basically everybody giving them an A. So, yeah, I'm great. But yeah, as far as we've spent a lot of the last couple days, just kind of talking like real NFL and of course by the draft. But we've talked a little bit of fantasy, and I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of bring it back to fantasy here today, because a lot of guys, especially running backs, ended up in situations where, I at least was thinking, okay, maybe Tampa's going to go for a DeAndre Swift or a Jonathan Taylor. Maybe Miami's going to go for one of those guys. Some of these teams that, there weren't a ton of teams that didn't have really what seemed like a settled running back situation. But there were a few, and those were the ones that I was expecting to be gobbling up these running backs. And it was almost kind of the reverse, the polar opposite. I mean, obviously you didn't have anybody like the Giants taking a running back high or the Panthers with Barkley and McCaffrey, but you had teams like the Ravens, adding Dobbins to a backfield that already had Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill. You had the Packers adding a running back to a backfield that already had Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. So just situations like that where, I think we now have, these days in the NFL, you have a lot of situations where there's not really the old school workhorse running back. And now I think we have a lot fewer after the draft picks that went in mostly that second and some in the third round last night.
Judahbuddha, how you doing? First takeaway from the draft.
So from what I can tell, the worst drafters this year are my team, the Packers. Like, so
what are they doing? What are they doing?
What do you mean? What are they doing?
I mean, what are they doing?
Yeah,
that is the question that everyone is asking. What are they doing?
What are they doing? So I don't mind Love, but I went back and looked at it, and I thought, why did my biggest qualm is, why did they move up to get him? Who did they think was going to take Love? The two people ahead of him was like, who is it? Minnesota or somebody?
Seattle and Baltimore, I think.
Well, they were probably afraid of someone else trading back into the. Although, just a quick side note. Well, just a quick side note. The Colts were a team that maybe he was linked to more than anybody else. Chris Ballard said they never tried to trade up. They never even thought about trading up for anybody.
So how many trade ups were there? Because I thought there were going to be so many more, but wasn't there only like 2?
I only remember. No, not in the whole.
There was a lot more. There were, especially in the second round, there was a lot of, we'll move up 2 picks and give you a 5th round. But in the first round, I think there was only like 2, maybe 3 major ones.
Yeah.
So that's my takeaway. And then taking a running back. What? Like, I didn't mind Love, but then taking a running back, the Packers?
Yeah.
Well, what makes it kind of interesting is like when the Colts first drafted Jonathan Taylor, I thought, man, that makes almost no sense. I mean, because they've got Marlon Mack. But then the more I started thinking about it, I thought, he's probably on the last year of his rookie deal. And I looked, and he was. And then I saw a story from a couple months ago where there was a rumor that got out that they were close to a contract extension with him. And the owner, Jim Irsay, came out and said, no, that's not true. So I think that's part of the thing is, teams just, unless you're a Saquon Barkley or a Christian McCaffrey, teams are learning their lesson more and more from like what happened with Todd Gurley, and not only the Gurley situation, but just the abundance of, running backs that you can plug in, young running backs. Yeah. And so I think they did this move a year in advance to move on from Marlon Mack. Aaron Jones is the same situation. Aaron Jones is in the final year of his rookie deal. So it's not quite the same situation. Mack has been more injury prone. And he's more one-dimensional. He's not a pass catcher. But I think the Packers are giving themselves probably some leverage there, that if Aaron Jones wants too much money, they can say, okay, bye-bye.
Smart, I guess.
I guess I'll go ahead and say the biggest takeaway for my team, then the Bears. We now have 10 tight ends on our active roster. That's not a joke.
You're not exaggerating that. Wow.
I am not exaggerating. When drafting Cole Kmet, we now have Adam Shaheen, Jimmy Graham, Demetrius Harris, Ben Brownecker, Jesper Horsted, JP Holtz, Dax Raymond, Eric Sauber, Clark Darian, and now Colt Kmet. So I was already wondering why, and now I'm just wondering why our front office is hoarding tight ends. Now I'm really confused. I don't know. It's kind of like polar opposites here because Jared's super excited about what the Colts did. Judahbuddha, you're a little more skeptical, and I'm just like, it happened. Our draft happened. We didn't have any third-round picks or fourth-round picks for that matter today. I mean, it was fine. It was fine.
So why? Do you have any idea why they grabbed another tight end?
Well, Jimmy Graham's on a decently lucrative deal for 2 years. And we have had woeful tight end problems ever since we lost Greg Olsen. Totally not still angry about that. And I mean, I guess trying to get a young tight end again to try to fill the hole, have Graham maybe mentor him for 2 years. I genuinely don't really know. I mean, he was the best tight end available. We're at pick 43 already, so it's a decently late pick. So I think the location is good. I'm just wondering why. I mean, I get we're having tight end problems, but do we need another one? I mean, I'm okay with it, but I just don't fully understand what their thought process is here. And then we took a corner. So,
do you have any ideas?
Maybe just he was their best player on their board, and some teams, are just so stuck in take the best player available, even if we have, 10, even if we have 9 other guys at that situation. So I think some people just get rigid, like in their thinking. To me, is there no one that's like, I don't know what their grading system is. If they use like point systems from 1 to 100, or if it's more generalized, like A+, A minus, B+, all that. But I mean, to me, if you've got a guy within a point or two, of another guy, and you've got 9 guys at that position already, maybe take the other guy, even if he's a couple of points lower at a position you need more, unless you think, that this guy you're taking just has the ability to become a superstar. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
I saw the Ravens talking about whoever they took. I can't remember, saying that they couldn't believe they didn't want to take whoever they took, but they couldn't believe he had fallen so far that they just couldn't help themselves.
Yeah.
Who was that? Can you guys explain that?
Was it J.K. Dobbins?
No, maybe they were talking about the first round. I don't know if they were talking about the first round or the second round. The first
Could be
round,
either Patrick Queen.
Yeah, they took Patrick Queen in the first round. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, Dobbins was a guy who dropped, so maybe that's the one they're talking about. But
especially because didn't they trade
Dobbins.
up? They traded up with New England to get him at that point too.
Yeah, I guess
I remember
so.
correctly.
Yeah,
so it must have been him.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. I can't remember.
Well, if it was, I get it. If they traded up for J.K. Dobbins, because Ravens are fine on defense, and they got away with highway robbery in Jacksonville, so they're fine on the defensive side of the ball. Their offensive line is great. I mean, their wide receiver core is good. It's not great, but it's good. They've got all-star caliber quarterback, all-star caliber tight end, and the running back situation is also very good. But, I mean, if you like something that you see that much in J.K. Dobbins and your team is that well-rounded, why not take another explosive player? Like, I get what the Ravens are going for here. He fell to the pick in the 50s. They're already set up in a lot of other positions. I like what the Ravens did here. I get it.
Yeah, I agree. They're always going to be a team that's run heavy, between Lamar Jackson and the running backs that they have. What they've got, Mark Ingram is very good. He had low mileage considering he was in New Orleans for so many years in committee systems. But he's not like an explosive long-term solution. Gus Edwards is a solid backup for him. Justice Hill is, sort of a smaller, shiftier guy. So yeah, Dobbins gives them a more long-term solution for that position for a position that, is critical to what they do. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. So their general manager said, the team was surprised Ohio State running back J.K. Dobbins was still on the board at the 55th overall pick. And he said, we really didn't expect him to be there. And I don't think anybody really did. And so we just had to take him. He's just that talented of a guy. So how do you feel this is going to impact old Ingram? Because Ingram and Lamar are besties.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think this hurts a lot in my opinion because Ingram was already slipping to like a 6th round pick at this point because he started sharing the backfield at the end of the year. And a lot of his carries were red zone carries last year because a lot of his points came from touchdowns because he was only getting 80, 90 yards a game.
He was having some 40. I had a lot of shares of him, and he was having a lot of like 53-yard games, and not catching passes.
Yeah.
And, really just living off getting 2 touchdowns. So.
Yeah. He got the touchdown. So with touchdown dependency, he was fine. But now you've got J.K. Dobbins, who doesn't make a lot of mistakes running. He's a good, headstrong runner. He's not afraid to run into a blitz. He's good. He's a really good running back. And
that sounds like Ingram.
Yeah, so basically you just got a younger version of Ingram. The Ravens are getting younger. You've got Andrew's second year. You've got your wide receiver core for the most part entering second year, third year. You've got Lamar Jackson going into third year. And now you've got J.K. Dobbins. And I think Ingram's still going to be the number one, but I don't know how long that's going to last. It worries me a lot about Mark Ingram. And I love Mark Ingram as a player. So
yeah, Ingram is 30. He's at that age. It doesn't happen to everybody. Marshawn Lynch stayed strong, Frank Gore, but the guys that the running backs like 30 and over who continue to be very productive are more the outliers than the normalcy. So it makes sense for him. Yeah.
So basically, if I were to give a theme to the draft this year, it's about, I would say, future proof. Like teams are future proofing. I look, especially the Packers, I believe that's what they're doing. They're just future proofing. If you look at, I don't know what the Bears are doing in case they don't have, enough tight ends for next year. But but for the most part, when I think about all these running back situations that you're talking about, Jared, I think it's future proofing. I mean, it's what you said. They saw what happened with, these running back controversies, holding out and getting paid too much. And like, we don't need to do that. Let's change the paradigm.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Because we had Melvin Gordon, we had Ezekiel Elliott, as far as, the holdouts, and then, the Todd Gurley situation of where they did pay a guy and, backfired spectacularly. So yeah, I think they're deciding. I saw a thing, like as far as talking about like themes of the draft and stuff like that. I saw some analysts say like, mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be running backs, because all these guys, about to come off of their rookie deals are, got replaced last night. So, yeah.
I like that.
And so again, to me, like the big thing of the draft is like who all got hurt by a lot of those picks. And so I was messaging Judah about this a little bit last night. I mean, you look at the Packers, Aaron Jones. I don't want Aaron Jones in the first round now. I'm not sure how I feel about him in the second round. Devin Singletary. Judah's still pretty high on Devin Singletary, but the Bills took Zach Moss. So I think he may get sort of that Frank Gore role. Kerryon Johnson, which this one
makes more sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense. And he's so injury prone. I would have been hesitant to take him before like 6th round or something anyway. But they added DeAndre Swift. The Colts situation, Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that could be like a 50-50 split. Mack was a guy that I really liked as a 5th round guy. He was almost going to be sort of my Chris Carson this year, who I was getting a lot of Chris Carson in the 5th round and felt like that was a steal. I thought Marlon Mack, prior to them drafting Jonathan Taylor, was a steal in the 5th round. Not so much now. Then
Damian Williams, CEH.
Damian Williams, literally was the next guy on my little list here. Yeah, CEH is how's that workload going to be? I think bottom of the 1st round it goes to CEH, but I think they're still going to keep Damian Williams involved. He's been productive for him. We already talked about Ingram, and so then the other guy, and maybe there's somebody I'm forgetting and leaving out here, but then the other one is the Rams situation. So now they've got 3 running backs who how's that going to be divvied up? So for me, I think not only does it muddies those situations, and so therefore the 10 to 12 guys that are sort of workhorse running backs that you don't really have to worry about threats to their workload suddenly become much more valuable. I can see. So for me, it changes it in the sense that my original strategy was like 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Now it's probably going to be 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds, because I think it starts to drop off more after that. And then I'll go get, wide receivers and things like that.
So who are the 2nd round, 3rd round running backs that you guys think become more valuable now?
So I did a list. I did a list of those too. I did a list of guys who, and this is a much shorter list, but guys who I think then bump up, not only because of what was happening with some of those other teams, but what didn't happen with their team. So a guy that I already liked was Austin Eckler, who was going to be going probably bottom of the 2nd round. I think he went bottom of the 2nd round. And maybe in our mock draft, I know he did in the free team that I drafted. He's probably a 1st round pick for me now.
Who?
Wow.
Austin Eckler.
Oh, Eckler.
Austin Eckler. For 2 reasons. One, they drafted a young quarterback. They not only drafted a young quarterback, but they drafted a young quarterback who threw 25% of his passes were screen passes at Oregon. So I think they try to go ahead and get him in pretty fast. Maybe it's game 2, maybe it's game 3, but I don't think they drag things out with Tyrod Taylor. So I think he's in there, and he's having to rely on his running back, tight end, things like that. So I like Austin Eckler. And the other thing was I wanted to see if the Chargers drafted a running back in the first few rounds, and they didn't. So maybe they could still take one in the 4th. But a guy in the 4th round, doesn't scare me nearly as much as a guy in the first 3 rounds. So Austin Eckler is the main one that moves up for me. There's a few others like, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, maybe Miles Sanders, since the Eagles didn't take anybody else. But at the very least, I think Sanders, even if he's splitting carries, he's a more attractive option over guys like Boston Scott than some of these other guys are on the teams who drafted running backs last night. And I'll finish up with one last guy who probably maybe jumps up two and a half rounds for me. I would have taken him probably in the 8th round before. I might take him in the 6th, maybe the bottom of the 5th. Now is Jordan Howard with the Dolphins because they didn't draft anybody. And so if they don't take anybody in the 4th round today, and they don't end up trading for somebody like Fournette or something like that, I mean, these are all still possibilities. But if they just stick with what they've got and Jordan Howard's there, you've got an offense that's been pretty productive with Fitzpatrick. And then if they switch to Tua, then they're going to want to rely on running the ball more. I would take Jordan Howard at the bottom of the 5th round.
Interesting.
I hate Jordan Howard, and I agree with you.
I think another guy. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, I've been high on him since he got traded there, and now, like you said, they didn't do anything to shore up that to replace him or anything, or to take any carries away from him. What were you saying, buddy?
I think this is also going to make closer to 3rd, 4th round guys, Kenyon and Gurley. They're going to become a lot more valuable too, I think. And I agree.
Gurley.
I think this also could maybe hurt Melvin Gordon's stock because Philip Lindsay is still there. They haven't done anything with him. We don't know what their split's going to be like, and that also worries me. And so I think, Jared, to your point about how the running backs with basically no competition are going to be going higher, now all the ones with competition are going to start to kind of go all Mac, Gordon, Johnson, but Swift, I think he's probably going to be number 1 pretty quickly. But all of those guys, I think, are going to fall a little bit farther simply because now we have an overflow of running backs in duos or committees at this point.
Where did Swift go?
Detroit.
Oh, Detroit. Oh, that Johnson. Okay. I'm even looking at David Johnson a little bit shinier now.
Same. Yeah. It's the only thing with him. And I agree, AJ, about Gurley and Drake. Drake was the one that I was kind of a little bit iffy on, thinking okay, well, Chase Edmonds, are they going to try to, I don't know how much they're going to try to use him, but I think comparatively, again, compared to some of these other situations, Drake looks more closer to a workhorse. And who was the guy you just mentioned?
David Johnson.
Oh, David Johnson. Yeah. So, Duke Johnson was, I think, a 3rd round. Maybe Duke Johnson was a 3rd round pick. Pass catcher. He's similar to David Johnson. So I don't know how they're gonna. But David Johnson's such a good pass catcher. So I don't know how they're gonna divvy up that, because it's not like Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson, where it's these clearly defined roles where Hyde's not a pass catcher. He's just a power runner. I agree. I think it bumps David Johnson up too.
Here's the thing that scares me though about David Johnson. We all know what he could do, but we also all know that the Texans line is atrocious. And Deshaun Watson looks like the late 2010s version of Andrew Luck now, with the amount of times that he is under pressure. And here's the thing. The Texans did nothing in the draft. They got 1 tackle in free agency. Their offensive line is the exact same, and I don't trust it. And that's what worries me about David Johnson the most.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The only good thing is, Watson started to dump off more last year, and that's why DeAndre Hopkins' production went down. And Johnson can catch the ball. So I think he'll still have a safe floor, but yeah, as far as like pure running, I agree. It's scary.
Did you see the thing about Bill O'Brien melting down about having tech problems and stuff?
Oh no.
No, I didn't. No.
Apparently he was let me see if I can find it. He was really upset, and then afterwards talked about how the root of his anger was a few former colleagues. Bill O'Brien thought he had a deal done with the Lions while the Texans were on the clock with the 90th overall pick, but Detroit backed out. Listen, we talked anyway. So he was having some kind of crazy tech problem. I mean, it's just so Bill O'Brien.
Like that guy has some anger issues. Have you seen the one where he was going in the tunnel? I think it was last season, and he starts screaming at a fan is heckling him, and he starts screaming at a fan, and he like walks back out to like, scream obscenities. And it was like DeAndre Hopkins, I think, that had to like pull him on into the tunnel. Like that dude is just.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And just quick FYI, the fourth round just started, so the Bengals are on the clock. So let me turn up my TV real quick so I can hear the pick too.
So AJ, how's it work? Yeah. Why do the Bengals get first pick for each round?
Oh, because they were the worst team.
So they just goes automatically.
Yeah, it goes in order of where you place at the end of the year. So Super Bowl champ goes last, worst team in the league goes first in every round. And the reason why it changes so much is because people trade like, fifth rounds and fourth rounds from like years prior.
I see.
So then it's different.
Yeah, and there's also compensatory picks like at the end of at least the third round. I'm not sure.
Third round is where it starts, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm really curious today to see. You were saying at the beginning like how we don't know the names of anybody left except former Georgia players, and that's exactly right. Like I was thinking like Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason, the quarterbacks who Eason was at Georgia and then went to Washington. Rodrigo Blankenship, the kicker. So yeah, it's like those guys, and then I know almost no one else that I can think of.
We need to make a T-shirt that says "Dog Nerds."
Yeah,
yes, in red,
absolutely
on gray.
So that's that. But the thing, but I think again, just like day 2 was probably the most interesting that it had ever been because of the depth of talent there. I think day 3 is pretty interesting just because of a couple of those quarterbacks still on the board. Eason and Fromm. Like Fromm, people were saying, he might be, bottom second round, third round, probably a third round guy as we got closer to the draft. That looked more and more like where he was going to go. Eason, though, like Eason has to be shocked right now. Like I don't think the Eason camp saw this coming. If they had, he would have, I think, been back at Washington again next year because he, former like number 1 pick out of high school, I'm sure was just already had it envisioned draft day where he was going to go like number 1 or number 2 or something like that. And he drops out of day 1, he drops out of day 2 in the second and third round, and all the way into the fourth round. I would say he goes here. I would think maybe he doesn't fall any farther, but he's got to be shocked and regretting his decision right now.
Yeah, man, it's really weird that, especially the thing that shocked me is that because we had what 4 quarterbacks go off the board round 1. We had Burrow, Tua, Herbert, and Love. The thing that shocked me is that Hurts was the first one off the board because in every ranking I'd seen, Hurts was under Eason and under Fromm. And Eason and Fromm, for a lot of people, could go either way depending on what kind of guy they like, what kind of position they like.
Here's the Bengals.
All right.
Who?
a linebacker out of Appalachian State. No one you've ever heard of, like Akeem Davis
Elijah
Gaither.
Wan. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So no one you've heard of, or no one I've heard of. Yeah.
But yeah. Like Hurts was
into
the first
Eagles.
One.
Into the
Philly.
Eagles.
To Philly.
Yeah.
That makes the least amount of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was surprising. I want to know with Fromm, because with Eason, with Fromm, I mean, it's just, you're moving to a more athletic quarterback sort of league. And, you got the Patrick Mahomes and the Ryan Tannehills and the Lamar Jacksons and all these different guys. So Fromm is sort of, I get why he's slipping, because he doesn't have a cannon arm. He doesn't have great mobility and stuff like that. He doesn't have all the physical tools. Eason's just more surprising, though. It makes me wonder, like, did he just completely flunk his interviews? Or were they scared off by, he doesn't handle pressure well. For a big guy, I think I talked about this some last night, for a big guy, he gets skittish around pass rush. So maybe a combination of those two.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Apparently, Eason had a really hard time in the combine interviews, and a lot of people weren't happy with it.
Yeah.
So you guessed it. It. And it goes to what we were saying a couple days ago about before the draft even started, how it was Tua and Burrow, and then everybody, and then I guess
and Herbert. Everyone except you was Herbert.
No, not everyone. And then everyone else was just kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Although Love was somebody who kept coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the potential was just too much for teams to lay off of him there. So
yeah, Love is definitely a coach project, though.
Yeah,
to work on.
It makes me wonder where Love would have gone if the Packers hadn't taken him, and especially still
Philly.
It frustrates me that the Packers moved up.
So Judahbuddha let it all out. Jordan Love to Green Bay. Everything you're thinking. Go ahead.
Well, I've already talked about it. Like, I just I think it's a great place for him, and it's great for the Packers. It's the future. It doesn't threaten Aaron Rodgers. It just it gives a good project to who's the new coach? What's his name again? LaFleur. Yes, it gives who has been considered sort of a quarterback whisperer, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah. Here's my question for you on the Packers, though.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, this is sort of what it looks like to me. It feels like the Packers are sort of straddling the fence here. They made it to the NFC Championship game last year, but they were not even close to threatening San Francisco. San Francisco had that game in hand by halftime. Yeah. So it feels like they're talented enough that they can beat most teams, but maybe not the elite teams. And it seems like, based on their drafting, that they don't think they're really close enough to challenge those teams, but they're not really going to blow it up either. This is the Washington pick. Hang on. Sadiq Charles tackle. Yes, Sadiq. Of course, we were waiting to see where he'd go.
So glad they got him.
He's LSU, so just yet another LSU player. Anyway, just to finish that off. So it seems like they, it's like, well, we're good, but do we really even want to bother with trying to fill needs? Because I don't think we're close enough to beat the elite teams. So let's go ahead and draft for the future. But they're not, of course, going to tank either. So it just feels like they might be in this sort of, no man's land, straddling the fence of trying to have it both ways. And it ultimately could fail both ways.
It could be. I think what it shows is they have a lot more confidence in their wide receivers, or their wide receiver plan, whatever that may be. They might have a plan to trade trade what's his name, the Aaron Jones for like a, I mean, the Arizona just got DeAndre Hopkins, so there are opportunities out there for wide receivers, right?
Elite
In
wide
the trade.
receivers.
Elite wide
Yeah.
receivers in trade options. So maybe they just
What
saw that
team's
and
going
they're
to take a running back? Like we just talked about, most teams.
Yeah,
I think that's the
having running back.
problem. That's the
That's a
problem
good
is
point.
like, and that's why like Fournette is still where he is, and why Melvin Gordon couldn't force his way out of LA with a trade is
a good
because there's just, I think it's odd, but we're seeing right now is where with quarterbacks and running backs, teams don't need to trade. I mean, like with quarterbacks, you've got, and that's part of the reason I think that we're seeing it's not just on, I think, Eason bumbling this, but look, Cam Newton's out there. Jameis Winston is out there as a free agent. Andy Dalton needs a trade partner, and at this point, like it's looking less likely to me that he's. I mean, who's gonna take him? The Colts would love probably to, even though they won't say this, to find a trade partner for Jacoby Brissett because they have so much money tied up in him and Rivers. But just nobody. If you're not elite, it's like, there's a short amount of elite guys, and then there's a whole lot of like, pretty good or okay in between. So. Oh, the Raiders just traded up. Let's see who they traded up for. John Simpson, a guard. Every time a team trades up, I'm like waiting to hear one of those quarterbacks called. That like this has gotten to a point where they're like, okay, we want to take them, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the further they fall, the less you have to worry about trading up.
Yeah, well, the further they fall, like if you didn't value them to the point of being even like a top 4th round pick, then how much are you really gonna want to trade up for them? Yeah.
Well, Thomas H has got some comments for us, unless you want to finish up, Judahbuddha.
No, I was actually going to comment. Go ahead. I was going to comment on what he said.
All right. Well, first of all, he's taking shots at my Bears, saying that we need to get more tight ends today. Haha. Yes. Thank you very much. So he says, do you agree that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the worst mentor ever?
Okay, well, here's my response to that.
Oh, here we go.
What do you mean by worst mentor ever? Do you mean the most uncomfortable one? Do you mean because does a nice mentor make an efficient mentor make? Okay. Anyways,
I think he's asking more along the lines of, is this going to be like an Alex Smith-Mahomes relationship or like a Garoppolo Brady
let me give you another relationship. What about oh crap, can't remember his name. Who came before Aaron Rodgers?
Brett Favre.
What about a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers? Huh?
And Favre was ticked. He wouldn't speak to Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. Sometimes the best mentor is the grumpiest, most buttholey kind of guy.
I don't think Favre was a great mentor, though. I think Aaron Rodgers just was
a great player.
Yeah.
See, here's the difference also with Jared, because Rodgers during the draft was a possible number 1 pick when he entered the draft, and the Packers only got him because he fell to them. Love was a end of 1st round, borderline 2nd round pick, and the Packers jumped to take him. This is a completely different situation in terms of talent, in terms of quarterback situation. I think it's completely different.
I don't think having a loving fatherly quarterback is important to the process. I think having a little pain is going to be good for Love.
What do you think?
I think the thing with Aaron Rodgers is that he's actually talked about wanting to be like a good mentor for the next generation. I remember I saw some videos when Josh Rosen came out a couple years ago of him working with Josh Rosen, because some people, not in terms of arm strength, but in terms of personality and intelligence and body type and things like that, kind of comped Rosen to Aaron Rodgers. And I think Rodgers' experience with Favre, with what happened with him there, will probably make him a little more self-conscious about not doing that to somebody else. I saw back after the Packers, I think, had won the Super Bowl, and Aaron was a little bit more, he had more credibility and he had a little bit more freedom to be open about what had happened with Favre. And he basically said that the mentoring that he got was, I mean, he didn't really get mentoring. He got value from it in that he could watch how Brett Favre conducted the huddle, watch how Brett Favre did certain things.
That's what you need. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was never a time where, you know, Favre was like pulling him aside and being like, oh, okay, listen, here's what you did here, things like that. So it wasn't a situation where he was really getting feedback or, you know, any kind of encouragement. It was only from what he picked up himself. I think he'll be more, I don't think it'll be exactly it's not going to be an Alex Smith Mahomes situation where he knew a year later that Mahomes was going to be taken over for him. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in between those two, where Aaron Rodgers, like AJ said, Jordan Love was a late first round pick. He's not a guaranteed success. I think Rodgers will just see it as, I'll tutor the guy, but I'm going to plan on having this job for the next 3-4 whatever years. So I think it's going to be somewhere in between there.
Yeah. Thomas H, however, says worst mentor, self-absorbed and moody, won't give him the time of day. Oh, you described Ben Roethlisberger. Okay.
Well, I did see another thing too, where it said Aaron Rodgers is going to treat Jordan Love like family. And so the joke was where he had basically like exiled his whole family, there for a while, So it's a possibility. Like I'm giving Aaron the benefit of the doubt here, but he is moody and he seems like if you make him mad, he will just
prima donna.
Yeah, I guess could be that way. So he will cut you off. So. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. He could do that because he has shown that he will do that with people, in a heartbeat. I think maybe part of it may just be that that public image, though, like he would look like such a hypocrite after all the stuff with Favre. So I think at least publicly he may try to do just enough because he would look like the world's biggest hypocrite if he did that with Jordan Love.
And everybody's watching him and talking about this. There's no way he's going to snub Love. I mean, the guy's name is Love, for Pete's sake.
I think it's going to probably be something in between the two that we're talking about. Like, it's not going to be quite as aggressive as Roethlisberger, but it's not going to be quite as, like, buddy as Smith and Mahomes. And Thomas H. brings up, where will Rodgers play in 2021? Green Bay. Because his contract goes to 2024.
Yeah.
Packers have their hands tied.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way around that. I mean, if the situation got bad enough, maybe they could. But I basically what I saw said that they couldn't get rid of him if they wanted to. He's there at least the next 2, probably 3 years because of the dead cap hit on it.
Yeah, well, this year is not going to be in the NFL, so 2021 is basically.
Well, we don't know for sure, but
yeah.
I'm joshing you, but I don't think Love is ready to be a starting quarterback.
Oh no!
I mean, he may not even ever be ready to be a starting quarterback. Like he's such a big project. He might just be a really just an who's Taysom Hill type. They use him for gadget plays. They might be actually looking at him replicating that Taysom Hill strategy.
I don't think you trade up into the bottom of the first round to take a Taysom Hill type player. But you're right. I think that he could get used that way some early on, just to kind of like throw him in there and get him a little bit of experience. Oh, Aaron Rodgers would love that, to come off the field for another quarterback. Yeah, that would make things so much better.
I think the thing that I think if I'm thinking like my goodness, if I'm thinking like Green Bay here, my biggest reason for grabbing Love is because they need a capable backup in case Rodgers gets injured for a long time. The guy has had 3 head injuries. He has had 4 right leg injuries and 2 like shoulder collarbone problems. That's a lot. So in the event that he is out for a long time, which is very probable according to injury history and age, even though he's still good, I think this is more of, okay, we're going to A, prep for the future here, and B, hope for the best but expect the worst and have a capable backup just in case Rodgers gets injured.
What happens, though, if, say, next season, midway through next season, that does happen, Jordan Love comes in and is amazing, and
Tom Brady.
And then you've got.
That's what I was thinking.
but we just talked about the contract problem though.
Yeah.
So what happens then? So it could create another like Favre Rodgers, situation with Rodgers Love. So and also I can't wait to start reading the tabloid type headlines of Packers new QB getting no love from Aaron Rodgers. I'm just waiting. I'm just ready. Give me those headlines. I'm ready for them right now.
That's the exact scenario that I didn't want to talk about, and that like that thing like you're scared and anxious about.
Yeah,
that's the thing that I'm worried about, and that does give credence to all these crazy fans who are like, I hate the Packers now. It's like, I do worry about a situation where Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, Love comes in and is amazing.
Yep. It's entirely now. Do they still have Deshaun? Who's their backup? Is it still Deshaun Kaiser?
Let me check real quick.
I don't even think
because
who was the guy before
Deshaun Kaiser's. Oh my goodness, Deshaun Kaiser's with the Raiders.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, that's right. He did go. So who is Love their only backup?
The Packers backuup's currently at the
is.
quarterback position.
Yeah, it's Love.
Wait a minute. No, they also have Tim Boyle.
But
Manny
Wilkins. Well, yeah. I mean, Tim Boyle's got this. If anything happens to Aaron Rodgers.
But you know who it makes me think about is the other guy. Who is the other guy that they had? He came in for almost a whole season. I can't remember his name. No.
I think you're thinking of Kaiser.
No, it wasn't Kaiser.
How long ago is this?
Like a year ago. Remember, he's kind of a Love type player, except
Kaiser.
No, it's not Kaiser.
Brett Hundley.
Hundley.
Oh, okay.
Hundley came in for.
I had to Google that. Yeah, he actually did.
And
9 games.
He is kind of a Love player. Has that like running ability, quick pass ability, and he's better than Kaiser. But he just had no football sense whatsoever. I saw his interview. You know how there's those quarterback interviews, prospect interviews where the college guys come in and talk to who's the guy who's the coach of the Raiders now?
Oh, John Gruden.
Yeah, the John Gruden. Sits down with John Gruden. So I watched a couple of them, and the comparison between Hundley and I watched Hundley's, and then I watched who's Philadelphia's quarterback?
Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
So yeah, I saw Wentz was amazing. Like he was teaching things to.
Yeah, right.
But Hundley was just like, I don't know. He was just kind of like had no football sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm anxious to see what Love does as far as the football acumen and intelligence.
Yeah.
And Thomas H. said, seems like Rodgers has always had an icy relationship with his head coach. This definitely won't help. Well, Mike McCarthy's gone. So
no, but he kind of had an icy relationship with whatever the new
yeah.
Yeah, he made a comment when LaFleur came in last year about the way LaFleur was running practices. Yeah, Rodgers has opinions for days. He will give you an opinion on everything that's going on. So it's one of those. He's one of those situations where, and Judah will, I think, maybe understand this reference, is like Aaron Rodgers to me is like the CM Punk of the NFL. Extremely talented, but he has a personality and he has opinions, and you are probably going to be if he was not as talented as he is, there's no way you would deal with him, because you're just going to be exhausted trying to deal with him. So
it's a little different because CM Punk was so small.
Aaron's not big. Aaron's not,
no,
but
not big.
That's
but
why
he
keeps
has
getting
a big presence. Whereas CM Punk,
he's the LeBron James of the NFL. He's the coach of the team. In reality.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
CM Punk, though, I always thought, like, man, you're so little, dude. He's all talk. My one of my clients got a picture with him because he's from Chicago.
Oh,
and
yeah, nice.
He's so small. Like, I feel like I could beat him up.
Don't try it.
You probably could in real life. I mean, like, he tried the MMA thing and it did not go well, you know. But a couple other quarterbacks, like I think to me, like, for all the losers of this draft, because I think there were a lot of fantasy losers because situations just got muddier. Because not only did you have all those running back situations we talked about, but then, I didn't really love CeeDee Lamb to Dallas. That makes, that muddies up Amari Cooper's value and Michael Gallup's value. And then at the top of the second round, we had T. Higgins. AJ called it, a receiver to Cincinnati. And I was just like, no way. Come on. They already got AJ Green. They got Tyler Boyd. They got John Ross. They've got all these needs. They're not going to add another receiver. They added T. Higgins. So, I mean, I guess AJ Green's still going to be, if he's healthy, the number one guy. But man, that muddies up a ton of value. But for me, the guys
tagged him, didn't he? They tagged AJ.
They did. They tagged him. So I mean, I guess maybe they could still be a trade.
They could trade him to the Packers.
They could. That's actually like
Mixon. They're not going to take Jones though.
No, not for Jones.
For a pick.
People don't trade for players anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They trade for like fourth round picks.
That was what people were saying last year before the trade deadline, and people thought that he was coming back. Is trade him to the Packers. But to me, like the main winners out of a lot of this were quarterbacks. For fantasy value, because Dak gets another weapon. Drew Lock got two weapons. They got Jerry Jeudy and was it Hamler? I can't remember who was the other receiver they drafted.
Reynolds or something like that. Jefferson? Was it Jefferson?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't Justin Jefferson.
I can actually check real quick.
And then you've got Matt Stafford got another weapon to dump off to, and DeAndre Swift. Daniel Jones gets more protection. So to me, the quarterbacks, some quarterbacks are kind of the winners here. And so for the quarterback position, I think it just puts even less emphasis on drafting one of those guys early. You can get good quarterbacks later, so I'm more in on using my first 4 picks on like a star receiver and 3 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
So where was Dak drafted? Wasn't he drafted third round?
I think he was 4th, if I remember right.
4th round?
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I mean,
yeah. I was a little bit higher on him coming out, though. I thought he was one of the quarterbacks that fell.
Well, I'm talking about
this was a gem that you found in the 4th round.
Well, that's what I'm talking about for Fromm and Eason.
Yeah. Like Russell Wilson was 3rd round. Dak was 4th round. Kirk Cousins was 4th round. Yeah. You can get guys. It almost seems like you're better off either taking one in the first round at the top of the draft
Hmm.
or waiting till later, because it seems like, and maybe the data would prove me wrong, but it seems like a lot of the guys that go like second round, you just never hear from them again. They're not quite good enough to go first round. You think maybe there's some potential there, and then it's not, and they're bust. And then, so it seems like either like first round or like third, fourth is the way to go on it.
That's
I would have
interesting thing to look
Yeah.
up. I'm gonna look that up right now.
I would have no problem. The Colts picks coming up in a bit. If they use their fourth round pick on Fromm, I'd have no problem with that. Or Eason. I mean, fourth round pick, Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers are on 1 year deals. The Colts don't have a quarterback signed beyond 2020. So
here's a list of the second round picks
from
Drew Lock that have done anything in their careers from second round from the NFL. Drew Lock, Deshaun Kaiser, Christian Hackenberg, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Geno Smith, Brock Osweiler. I think the data is proving you out, my friend. Andy Dalton, Colin Kaepernick, Jimmy Clausen, Pat White, Brian Brom, Chad Henne, baby.
That's my guy.
Kevin Kolb, Kevin Cobb.
He is the man.
John Beck, Drew Stanton. I mean, it's all these like really good
backups.
All right, Drew Brees, Travarius Jackson, Quincy Carter, and Marquise Tuilasopopo.
There are maybe like 3 guys who were consistent starters in the NFL for any period of time, and then after that,
Brees,
career backup.
Yeah, and Brees was like first pick of the second round or the first few picks of the
first pick.
Yeah. So generally, the moral of the story is don't draft a quarterback in the second round. Like if he's not good enough to go in the first round, just avoid and wait till later.
You're right on with that feeling.
Yeah, I just couldn't think. I couldn't think of I knew Brees, was dropped right into that top of that first or second round. But yeah, I was just thinking like, man, who all have we had? Hardly anybody. So yeah, I would have no problem. I'm really curious to see but the Colts need somebody long term, even if he's not their guy long term. He could be a backup for if a year or 2 years from now you find a superstar young quarterback. Fromm's always going to be a steady backup at worst, I think. So I would have no problem if they picked him here. And how many more picks have they got? I don't know, 4 or 5 picks maybe.
By the way, real quick, AJ Herschel, that comp between Watson and Luck was pretty spot on. I was thinking through it. I was like, that is a really good comp.
Talented quarterback.
Similar players.
Yeah, talented quarterback, decent wide receiver core, typically had 1 star, running back who came in and did some stuff and then just loses it because their offensive line was bad for 6 years. So I'm worried that happens to Watson because I liked him coming out of college. So I'm worried that happens to him.
Yeah, same. Like, I covered him when he was in high school, and I like him.
Really?
But
we hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, we had the Superman picture. Right?
That's my one thing that I gotta. It's my version of Matthew Berry talking every day about how he was in Avengers. That's always going to be my probably my biggest claim to fame. So
I love it. I give you a hard time, but I love it.
So yeah, I like him, there's that connection there. And then the Colts were my team, and so it happened to Luck, and so I seem to be the common denominator here of just getting talented generational quarterbacks' careers ruined by injury.
I love how AJ's like, yeah, he has the Superman thing that we always hear about. It's not that way.
How dare he for assuming that for 1 second you might not be a sarcastic jerk. That's just was completely inappropriate of him. I gotta close my. I'm becoming, my face is now glowing because the sun. I've got the curtains open. It was cloudy and now the sun's coming out. So I gotta do
very
this.
Superman-esque with the blue shirt and the hair.
I'll take it. I'm like irradiated Superman or something at this point. Yeah. So I got to tone it down a little bit here.
It's kind of funny. We're like in 4 different locations. Jared's just got like the sun brightening his face. You are in like the deserted library from the quarantine, and I look like I'm in a basement that's not a basement.
Where are you? Upstairs?
I am in the back room of my house. Yeah.
You got pretty good reception there.
Yeah, fortunately. I don't know why it works in this. It's the only room upstairs that works. Otherwise, I'd be downstairs with better lighting, but it's all right. Yeah, we're good. Fine. So this is interesting. I'm just thinking about this with we were talking about second-round quarterbacks. How do you think this affects Hurts and Wentz? Eagles, second round. What do you think? Let's go a little more in depth on that. What do you guys think is going to happen with that? Because that's the pick that confused me the most out of everything. Because as much as the Jalen Hurts, the Eagles quarterback out of Oklahoma. Because I get it because Wentz gets injured, but I don't get it because they have so many other needs, like everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a weird pick to me. I mean, they said that they want to be like basically a quarterback factory.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. I'm not sure if that's really the reason that they're doing it. I think it might just be more of the fact that Carson Wentz can't go through a season without getting hurt. But they're, it's a similar situation to Rodgers and Love there, where, I mean, obviously Carson Wentz is a lot younger and they probably view him as, the long-term future. But mainly because of the amount of money that they have committed to him. But, say he keeps getting hurt, maybe they turn to Hurts.
I think that Hurts was actually a really good pick for in the same way that Love was a good pick. I don't think they're going to be getting away from Wentz anytime soon, but Wentz gets hurt more than Rodgers, way more every year.
Oh yeah.
And Hurts is actually, I just went back and looked at my film analysis guy, and he said he went back and looked at every snap. And he was surprised. He loves his story. He loves the guy and was rooting for him. But when he was expecting to go to the tape and be sort of disappointed, but it was the opposite. He was surprised by how consistent, not flashy, but just a consistently good quarterback. So I have high hopes for him. What? But it is interesting. Who was on the board as far as wide receiver at that point?
I know Denzel Mims was still there because yeah, he ended up falling all the way to the Jets.
There was also Van Jefferson was still on the board.
Jefferson.
See, the thing I don't get is that they didn't take a cornerback, because we all know that the Eagles secondary was atrocious. And yes, they got Darius Slay, which helps out a lot. But one cornerback isn't going to fix all your problems. He doesn't have arms the size of Mr. Fantastic. They need help. And they still haven't really addressed it, I think, as much as they need to. So that's the thing I really don't get, because there's a decent amount of solid cornerbacks. There's a decent amount of defensive backs in the draft this year, and they still didn't take one. That's the thing that confuses me the most.
Yeah.
My feeling on that real quick is that, and this is more a philosophical view, is that coaches don't look at players like we do from fantasy standpoint or from fan standpoint. They look at systems. They look at players as functions of their system. And so I don't think unlike basketball, where you want to get a star in a certain position, you want to have stars. I think football's a little different, where they think, okay, we need to work on the system more rather than get better personnel. You know what I mean?
I think so for most teams. I would agree with that. I think the main exception there being the Rams, where with them it's just like we got to get players. We got to get really good players. We got to get good wide receivers, Cooks. We got to keep our running backs, Gurley. We got to get big people on defense. Traded for Dante Fowler, and that imploded. It did not
I
go
was going
well.
to say, look how that what happened.
They did get it together. Second half of the year, like last 8 games, they put together a playoff run, but by then it was too late. I just don't know if they can carry that into the season. That's the only thing for me.
Yeah,
my problem with them. But yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think we covered this a little bit maybe already, but I saw Thomas H was asking about the Lions backfield and whether or not we saw DeAndre Swift as the guy, or if they would do a committee. I think they try to do a committee with him and Kerryon Johnson, probably split that, and then Kerryon Johnson probably gets hurt again, and Swift becomes, a guy who gets 75% of the touches.
Judahbuddha, what do you think?
I'm a Kerryon guy. I love Kerryon. And also, I've come to your guys' side in the sense that the Lions play committees. They love committees, and they do not love running backs. And Johnson is always getting hurt, so I feel like Swift is, even if he is the guy, they just don't do the guy. If Johnson gets hurt, I think he could have some value.
So the Jets just took with their 4th round pick. I missed his first name, but P. Ryan is the last name. He's a cousin of Samaje P. Ryan, and so running back. So I don't know that really threatens Le'Veon Bell that much right now, but I think maybe they're already looking to life after Le'Veon Bell.
They should.
Yeah.
The dude ain't getting younger.
Here's my thing with Swift, Thomas H. I don't know if this is coming from fantasy perspective and also Georgia perspective, Falcons, just assuming here. If you're a Tech fan, I'm sorry. But here's the thing, I think, with Swift. I don't think Kerryon is as much. Believe it or not, I'm really interested to see what the third wheel in this situation is with Bo Scarborough, because he had a solid end to the year. Yeah. And so I think that's going to be really curious to see what ends up with him, because I do think Kerryon is going to get injured again, because we haven't had a year, I think, in 3 years in a row, dating back to college, that he's gotten injured. Mm-hmm. So I think Swift is going to be the guy eventually by way of injury. And I think if something were to work out for both of them, I think that a running back pair of Swift and Kerryon theoretically could work, especially because Swift is a better pass catching back, in my opinion. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's more likely they go by committee instead of by duo. But I think Johnson's going to get injured. I think Swift is going to be the number one guy. I don't know, by like week 6 or something, maybe either Swift is going to take over or Kerryon's going to get injured. I could see that happening because I don't trust Kerryon's knees.
I think they're just trying to collect a running back from every SEC team, because they've got both Scarborough from Alabama, they've got Kerryon Johnson from Auburn, and they've got DeAndre Swift from Georgia. If they could just get like an LSU guy and find a couple others.
You have to just rats. We just gotten CEH. Man.
Let's see. Now the Colts are up now, so I am curious to see do they. Because I think they're going to take a quarterback, not necessarily at this pick, but I watched the post-draft interview with Chris Ballard last night, and he does this little thing where he basically tells you what he's going to do without saying it. And so they were asking him about quarterback, and he said, "We're not there yet." So I think they're going to get a guy in this draft. Maybe it's not Fromm or Eason. Maybe it's somebody else. Although I will say the way they've drafted with Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, they go so hard for culture guys. I mean, these guys are awesome talents too, but they go for culture guys, and Fromm would fit the Colts perfectly. I will not be the least bit shocked if they get him. But I don't think it's a guarantee or anything. So.
See, the interesting thing for me about Fromm, I think best case scenario, he turns out like Drew Brees and just becomes like this incredible, accurate field general. I think worst case scenario for him, he turns into Josh McCown and just be a solid backup for like 12 years. He's accurate for the most part. He ends up being a good leader for the team later down the road. If he went to the Colts, I'd be very happy for them because he fits literally everything. He like checks all the boxes for Indianapolis, I think.
Yeah. He's, like I said, Kirk Cousins was a 4th round guy. I think he can be Kirk Cousins with better leadership skills. Kirk Cousins just doesn't have that confidence, that it factor. I think a lot of times that gets overblown, and because teams don't, just by some bizarre set of circumstances end up losing a lot of primetime games or something like that. But I think with kind of talking to Kirk Cousins and watching him or seeing interviews where people are talking to him, he doesn't seem to have it. Whereas Fromm does have that. So if Fromm could be Kirk Cousins with better leadership skills, gosh, how many teams would take that in a heartbeat,
Yeah. Well, one thing you have to think about is, where is he from?
Jake from State Farm.
It's from Warner Robins, actually.
Is it really?
Yeah. A friend of mine's wife went to the same church as him, and so I was in his wedding. Or I was in not Jake Fromm's wedding. I was in my buddy's wedding in that church where he went to church, and like the pastor that married my friends is like Jake Fromm's mentor. So yeah, so I have no, and so
so would a good comp be like a Wentz?
I think it's Cousins. Like Cousins doesn't have the strongest arm. He'll even say like he doesn't make certain throws because he can't make it without getting it picked off.
Cousins is a good Christian too.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Cousins is 6'3", Fromm's like 6'2" ish. I think again, Kirk Cousins got picked in the 4th round. To me, that's kind of the comp for Fromm, but Fromm's like a more confident, better leader.
Yeah. So who do you think would be a good comp for Fromm? I'm joking because you just got done talking about how good Kirk Cousins was a comp, and then I said somebody else.
Oh, yeah. I didn't pay attention.
And then you came back to...
We get the joke.
No, that's cool. I look forward to seeing him play. I think he's going to go with... Actually, I would like to see him be the backup for Breeze.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, that'd be a great fit for him.
When is the Saints pick coming up?
All right, Colts pick is in, and it is.
Saints got a little bit.
They took Jacob Eason. Oh wow! Oh my goodness! I'm not surprised they took a quarterback, but I'm kind of surprised that they took him over Fromm.
Wow! Interesting.
I like it. Hey, 4th round. Give that to me all day. 4th round.
The Colts are drafting well. They are drafting.
They are hitting it out of the park with this.
They have, yeah.
And you could basically say they took DeForest Buckner with their 1st round pick.
Yeah.
So they are doing extremely well.
DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Jacob Eason. Yeah, I mean that's a killer draft.
They're going to be good for years to come.
Yeah, I'm surprised. In terms of his style, I mean, Phillip Rivers would make a better mentor for Eason than Fromm because Fromm and Phillip Rivers would be just 2 completely different players. Eason is a better fit, but I didn't I didn't think they'd go for him. I thought they'd go for Fromm. But I love it because I don't know who's, Eason's got all the arm talent in the world. He's probably got the best arm maybe in the draft. So fourth round.
That's a steal.
Very nice.
I'll take that. People again, Arizona moved on from Josh Rosen, who was the 10th pick of the first round in a year. So if you get Jacob Eason in there and you're like, I don't think he's that much after all. All right, get rid of him after a year.
Winston's not even on a team right now.
Right.
He was everybody was saying he was the second coming of luck. He was what?
He was the number one pick.
He was the number one pick.
Draft.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, can we go through and think about who the number ones have been that have actually? It seems like if you want to become a really good backup, get picked number one. In the first round.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a lot of, or number two.
Yeah, well, we looked at number twos. That's a lot of good backups.
No. I don't mean second round. I mean like second
number
pick.
two.
Like you think about the guys. So Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf went 1-2. This goes way back. And Judah, you probably won't even know this because you didn't really follow football back then. But you remember the guy for the Patriots prior to Tom Brady was Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah.
So Drew Bledsoe was, I think, 1, and then Rick Mirer went number 2, I think, to the Seahawks. And if you're looking at me funny, it's because who remembers Rick Mirer?
I had a Drew Bledsoe card when he was in college. It was he was holding the Heisman Award.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wasn't wrong about Ballard. I was just wrong about which one it was. But last night, he had this like cat that just ate the canary sort of grin in their little post-draft conference with all the local indie reporters. And he said just the way it was, the inflection he put on it of like, we're not there yet, So I like it.
See, here's some interesting news I got for you guys. We got some relatively breaking news we weren't here for last night. So the Saints traded up to take a tight end, Adam Troutman, last year. What I didn't realize, they traded the rest of their draft to get that tight end, which I didn't realize. So now Fromm can't go to New Orleans, and I'm upset.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. They must have really liked him.
So what does that mean for Cook?
I have no idea.
Because I was really high on Cook this year. If they're going out and mortgaging the rest of their drafts for this guy, how good was he?
Well, I didn't mention this when we were talking about all the running backs, but I did put Jared Cook on our list of like guys who possibly could get really hurt by the draft. I don't, but it's kind of fringe for me though, because this guy's coming out of a small school. I don't know. And pardon me while I listen to some of them talk about Jacob Eason here. So you guys continue.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that makes me think of what I was going to talk about earlier about the Packers, just going back really quick to the Packers, is I think trading away Jimmy Graham and not
No, I think they let him walk. They let him walk.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, letting him walk, whatever. Letting him walk and not getting a wide receiver. I wonder if they have a lot of hope in, I think his name is Jace Sternberg or something like that. He was supposed to be an excellent
Sternberger.
Jay Sternberger. He apparently has a great deal of talent. He got hurt early on in the season last year. I wonder if he's one of these second year tight end breakouts. And
he could be.
Makes me want to follow what happens. What's the name of the guy that the Saints took?
Adam Brow, something or other. Hold on.
because I think the NFL is increasingly a tight end useful league.
Oh yeah, especially like the tight end position has completely evolved over the past 10 years. It was like Antonio Gates, I think, really kind of signaled, okay, tight ends can do more than just block now, which is interesting, bringing up the guy that you talked about, Jay Sternberger, because he's a great pass catcher. He's got awesome hands. He's a great route runner, but a poor blocker. And that's the only thing. That's the only thing holding him back during his combine. And when they went over his tape, that was his like biggest weakness. He wasn't a great run blocker. He wasn't that big either. What is he? I think he's like 6'4". He's 6'4", 251. So he's not a huge tight end. But in a league where you have Travis Kelce and George Kittle, and the league in and of itself has moved into a more passing league as well. Tight ends now catch the ball more. That could be pretty good. I still got to get the name of that Saints guy for you. Let's see here. Adam Troutman. Troutman, that was his name.
Troutman.
Yep.
Wonder if he's a good fisher.
I don't know. Maybe he's a good fisherman. Interesting thing enough, though. So now the Saints are off the board, and I know you and I were really high on Fromm.
So who's
going
to take
to the
Fromm?
Saints. I don't know. What if Minnesota does with all of the picks they got from the Saints? People have been worried about Kirk Cousins. We've had a million comparisons between Fromm and Cousins.
I think that'd be a good fit.
What if?
I think that'd be a good fit. I mean, for me, it's like now that the Colts are off the board, I'm just listening to them talk about like what a good fit it is for Eason to be able to work behind Rivers. You know, I mean, if he's going to work out anywhere, it's a good place for him with Frank Reich there, the head coach, and with Rivers. I mean, for me, it's like Saints, Patriots. Although I don't think the Patriots are going to take him. I mean, they've got Jarrett Stidham. I don't know. I think they seem fairly. I don't know. It seems like those guys might be on a similar level, and I'm not sure if you would want to repeat that. So for me, it would be Vikings, Saints. That could possibly see him as a future, heir to something. If he doesn't go a place like that, then, I think he's getting brought in as just like, okay, you're going to be a backup. I think it's going to be hard for him to go to any other situation where he wouldn't just, or any other situation where he could even possibly be looked at as the future,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's an interesting thing that fortunately I just got a text, and Thomas H let me know Niners traded to get Trent Williams from the Redskins. So this is great for Williams because now he gets to leave Washington, and I'm trying to figure out what they got him for.
What was the controversy? I saw a lot of articles about Trent Williams in Washington.
5th round pick this year and 3rd rounder next year. So Trent Williams, first of all, has been one of the probably most consistent offensive linemen in the NFL. But he's stuck in Washington. He wasn't happy with the situation there, and he was getting injured all the time at the same time. So it was just like a combination of things. But now he's going to San Francisco. Really good team. It's like San Francisco almost is like the Falcons to me after they lost to the Patriots. They shouldn't have a Super Bowl hangover. Something wrong has got to really happen for me, especially with this trade now. I like Williams to the 49ers a lot.
So what did they – I'm sorry, I caught the tail end of it. What did they give up for him?
5th round this year, 3rd round next year.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
And San Francisco. Oof. San Francisco is – getting scary.
Oh my goodness.
Here's my worry for fantasy is that I'm seeing a lot of teams become heavy defense, heavy non-skilled, like heavy on the non-skilled players. And it's going to be a lot of, you're seeing a lot of super teams develop, but they're not super teams that you expect to be high scoring, low defense. It's like really amping up their defense and offensive line, and not really paying much attention to the wide receivers and running backs.
Yeah, I think you can see that a lot with the 49ers being the best example. They've got a great defense, they've got a great offensive line, and probably good wide receivers and a decent running back core. But they also have a really good quarterback. And then you go to the Ravens, who with Ingram, I will say have a really good running back, decent wide receiving core, great defense. And even the Patriots, for the previous couple of years, they had Julian. They typically would have like one star, but then you'd see the wide receivers move out to other teams, and they wouldn't do so hot. The Patriots have had a great defense for a long time, but it's a really weird mix with the Chiefs, though, almost going anti that, where they didn't have a great defense. I mean, name-wise, they had a great defense, but statistically, they weren't doing so hot. But their offense is just stacked with stars.
And they won the Super Bowl.
It's weird. Yeah, it's a weird parallel. It's really strange.
But, go ahead, Jared.
No, this is off topic, so you guys.
Well, I just I've seen it with the Saints just going much heavier defense. A lot lighter on the offense. I've seen it with, like you said, the Patriots. I think who sort of started the trend was the Seahawks. You just get a lot of teams, so it's just tough for fantasy football. I think it's going to make for interesting games to watch, and if you as a fan of a team, you're going to like to see them win more. But for fantasy, it's going to kind of drag the points down a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that in that scenario, with like you take the Saints for example, they're just good everywhere. Good offensive line, great defense. You've got arguably the best wide receiver in the league, and you've got Alvin Kamara along with Drew Brees. Like, they should win a Super Bowl if you just look at the roster. I think with fantasy, you're going to have like two parallels. You're going to have really, really great defenses that everyone's just going to hate going up against. It's going to be San Francisco, New Orleans, Baltimore, possibly.
Bucks, probably.
Bucks, yeah, Bucks too. I'd also say like on the little bit of the lower end, Chicago, Pittsburgh as well. They're not going to be easy places, especially if you're at Chicago or Pittsburgh. They're not going to be easy places to go and win. But then you're just going to have pushover defenses. Like I would say the Jets, the Eagles haven't done a ton to fix it. They could be better, but we don't know. And then I think it's just going to be the defenses of the NFL. There's a lot less of just atrocious defenses.
I don't know.
Other than Jacksonville.
Oh, atrocious defenses. Yeah.
There's
like
a lot
as far as like bad, because even the Colts are going to be they're going to have a
they're going to have a good defense.
Oh yeah. I'd say like Jacksonville is the one true horrible defense
which is weird
in the NFL, which they were so good 3 years ago, and then they traded their kingdom away for a horse. So I don't know,
for something. I don't know what they did
for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, but they didn't even do that though.
Yeah, and if I was Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars had the first overall pick, I might be like, you know what? I really care about my education, and I'm going to go back to Clemson for one more season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other one I didn't mention, I think we did mention it before, is now though what might be the most likely scenario for Jake Fromm would be maybe the Falcons, because they like to take Georgia guys. They took who was the backup to oh gosh, now I'm blanking on my Georgia players. Shockley. They drafted Shockley.
Yeah.
They drafted Shockley before. I could
going back. My goodness.
I could 100. Yeah. Well, that's why I had to be like, wait, what was the guy's name again? Yeah, I could 100. They're coming up again. We're at pick 126. Falcons are coming up again at, where are they coming up again? 145 or so. I think I just saw it. They're coming up in another, 20 picks or so, 15 to 20 picks. I could see, and maybe it's not this round. I think maybe if Fromm's there in the 5th round or something, I could see him going there, because they like to take Georgia guys, high character guy who's going to be a backup, who's not going to be, they don't have to worry about the PR mess of like, oh, you're replacing Matt Ryan. Because Falcons fans are always eager to replace Matt Ryan. So, and I don't mean I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's smart. I think Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. It's just like it's been like that from the beginning. Like when he came in and replaced Vic, a lot of the Vic fans were mad at him, and people just never got over that. And so people have always been just eager to replace Matt Ryan. So this would be somebody who could be, you know, a low round or late round pick. You know, not a lot of draft stock in there, but if they don't have something else they need, and I think let's see, is Schaub back again, or who is their backup now?
I am not sure. I want to say they still have him.
I think they do.
Yep, they still have him. He's still there.
Yeah. So they got Schaub, and they got Kurt Benkert. I don't remember anything about him. He was let's see, he was out of UVA. I don't know if they took a late round pick on him or if he if he was an undrafted free agent or what. If they drafted him, then maybe they hang on to him as the I mean, he was mostly on the practice squad. He's been there for couple years. I don't know. Maybe they don't take Fromm, but it would be a Falcons thing to do because they like to take some young guys like that. So
it is interesting considering how we've talked so much about how most teams have like got their quarterback situation figured out, and it's like they're just perfectly fine now. And at this point, Fromm is pretty much sitting in a position where he's gonna be a backup. Like, almost guaranteed at this point, he's going to be like a next generation preparation, which is a really interesting dynamic for him.
Yeah. I'll say the other thing that I love about this for the Colts is say Eason turns out to not be the guy. And I was just listening a minute ago to Chris Mortensen talk about why he fell, and basically said like a lot of concerns about his work ethic, concerns about accountability. And these were all things that I had seen from different places, leading up to the draft, but I didn't think, and nobody else seemed to think that it would be enough to cause him to fall that far.
We're talking about Fromm?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know if I said Fromm, but I meant Eason. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these were all concerns leading up, to the draft. A couple of things with that. Even if that turns out to be true, even if they don't Phillip Rivers will, I think, pummel him like he's one of his kids if he sees that he's not putting the work ethic in. I think Phillip Rivers might just like drag him aside and whip him. So I like having because Rivers is one of the most competitive guys. So not just like the culture of the Colts. The culture of the Colts is built well to have one guy like that you can bring in, a young guy if you've got veterans in front of him that can help kind of maybe, whip him into shape and help him develop some better work ethic. And the other thing too is maybe this puts a little bit, if anything's going to put a little bit of a fire in Jacob Eason, is like saying, you had the talent to be a first round pick and you dropped all the way to the bottom of the fourth round. You've got to reconsider, a lot of things that you're doing here. So I like all those things. Here's the other thing. Say they figure out there's just nothing we can do with this guy. We can't fix his flaws on the field. We can't give him better work ethic or whatever. There's at least the perception that the Colts might have their quarterback of the future. So if they later see an opportunity, next year or 2 years from now or whatever, to take a guy that they feel a lot more confident about, maybe this allows them a better opportunity to kind of, be in a position to sneak up, trade up, or something to get a guy that, where people are thinking, the Colts already got a guy. We don't have to worry as much about them, taking this guy. So I love this all the way around. I think it's high reward potential with very little risk.
It's kind of funny. While you were talking, I was looking up the Colts depth chart too. And the more I look at it, the more I like the Colts in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, because I'm looking at it and you've got Rivers and then you've got Eason now. You now have Jonathan Taylor. You've got T.Y. Hilton for however long he lasts, and then Michael Pittman, so a little bit of a weak spot. You've got a really good offensive line. You've got DeForest Buckner now. You have Xavier Rhodes that you got in free agency. You've got Rock Ya-Sin. You have Darius Leonard as well. And the more I just look at the names myself, and it just gets so much better.
Real quick note: the Jets just drafted James Morgan, the quarterback out of Florida International.
Florida International, right? Wow, that is interesting.
So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think they like Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
but that is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And Thomas H. Sorry, it's been a second since we've gotten to you. He said that's funny. The Jets just picked a quarterback with a pick that belonged to the Bears. Yeah, I get it.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, one more guy going before Fromm. I mean, that's not somebody. Hurts at one point was not expected to go before Fromm.
I don't think he was ever expected to go.
Right.
Before Fromm.
Well, I saw a couple of mock drafts. I think that maybe had him going, but yeah, like 95% of them didn't. And then now James Morgan. So yeah, I feel a little bit bad for Jake Fromm.
I do too. What do you think's going on? Like, there was worse talk about Eason than Fromm.
Oh yeah, because he killed it in interviews too. Apparently,
I think it's just they're worried about the physical limitations. Just worried
that and the mediocre year 3 at Georgia too.
Yeah, if he could have, I wonder how much different it would have been if he could have come out, or if he had produced in year 3, like if those 2 years were flipped, years 2 and 3 were flipped, or even like 1 and 3, I wonder how much different it would have been.
Yeah. Thomas H. asked, do the Bears not have any draft picks? I guess they don't need any more players. Man, he is taking jabs. My goodness, he's taking jabs at my Bears.
You're going to have to, you're just going to have to spend the rest of the podcast like with your hands up like this, just to like guard from all these shots you're taking.
Yeah. Yes, for your information, we do have more picks. Just be patient and watch the draft. Oh my goodness. Okay. Interesting.
Sad thing for me is like I don't know, unless like there's ever a draft where the Colts just get another, the next time there's a draft where the Colts get a superstar QB, like there will probably it's just all downhill from here in terms of future drafts for me, because like I've just been getting everything I wanted, just these offensive star players and a quarterback in the future, and they traded their first round for an all-pro level defensive tackle.
Christmas came early this year.
It's just, it's a Christmas where you get like, 5 things you really want, and you're like, what do I don't even know what to do with all this. And I just subconsciously wore blue today.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, are we winding down?
I mean, I don't know how much. Let's see if I have anything on my little list here. I think we pretty well covered most of the things that I wanted to. Just going back, I'll just finish up with some more on my guys. Like like Michael Pittman. Pittman had in 254 targets in college, he had 5 drops.
Wow.
He had a 1.9% drop rate, which is
that's incredible. He had less drops in 4 years than the Eagles had in one year.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like a Michael Thomas level thing, and I think people knocked him down because he ran a 4.5 240. Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins both ran 4.5 740s. Keenan Allen ran a 4.7 40. So like speed is just not like it gets hyped up, but like, man, I am so happy with that Michael Pittman pick.
We
and
could tell.
yeah,
We could tell.
Really?
and then he also did, like, even though his top speed wasn't that great, he was great in like the 3-cone and the shuttle. And here's some interesting stuff about Jonathan Taylor too that I looked up after last night. Like in his interviews, he was calling Phillip Rivers Mr. Rivers. So that's why they love Jonathan Taylor. Part of the reason they love Jonathan Taylor is like this high character guy. He got accepted into Harvard. He almost went to play for Harvard.
They've got a good football team.
They do.
Smart football team.
And he I don't remember. I'd have to look this up again to find the exact wording of it. But he's a big guy.
Swift.
Big burly guy. Doesn't look that fast. He actually ran a sub 4.4 40.
Wow.
He ran a 4.39 40, and for his weight, which is like I don't know, it was hefty, for a running back. I guess they do a thing where they give like the top like weight adjusted 40 times. So basically how fast you are for your weight. And he had, I think, a top 10 all time weight adjusted 40 times. So like for his size, he is incredibly I mean, sub 4.40 is great for anybody, but for his size too, for a tough, big, like, rumbling running back that's hard to bring down, that's incredible. So I just could not be happier about this draft.
Yeah. So how about this? Unless you guys have anything else.
I got one thing.
Go ahead.
I made a little graphic.
Ooh, here we go.
It might be kind of graphic.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna put this up every time you guys. I actually had to use the bathroom earlier. I didn't dip out because I was bored. But every time you guys get into that dog nerd talk, I'm gonna put this up.
Perfect. We need to throw that on a shirt.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. How about to end off? How about we give a grade for each of our team's drafts? I feel like I already know what Jared is gonna do, but what if we finish off with that so far? Like so far, what grade?
How about this? A grade for your team and who you think had the best and who you think had the worst.
All right, there we go.
I'll need a second to look up the worst. So
I don't need anything to look up the worst.
Okay, how about
you're right. Never mind.
Yeah. I need a second to look up the best, but I think I know. I think
ours might be the same.
Yeah, probably. All right, so who's going first? Okay, I'll go first. All right, so I give the Packers B-. Not happy, but it's solid. It's solid. It's going to do good for their future. Worst, absolute worst to me goes to the Chargers. I feel like they took the worst quarterback they could. He's going to be an excellent backup one day, and they haven't solved any of their problems. And then best definitely goes to the Colts. They have really shined this whole draft. And so that's A. So,
which pick specifically?
So B-, F, A+. The pick specifically?
Yeah.
I like the wide receiver, and I like the wide receiver and quarterback. Best. Next.
Yeah, I can. My team and my top grade are both to the Colts. Thought about just giving them an A because I guess technically you could be higher if you had drafted if you had another opportunity to draft an Andrew Luck or something like that. So there's always room for improvement. But I'm going to give them an A+ for what they did with the picks where they had them. Getting an All-Pro level defensive tackle in exchange for the 13th overall pick. Getting the wide receiver that I wanted, who I think could end up. I think Michael Pittman could maybe end up being if not the top receiver out of the draft, then top 2 or something like that. Taylor, love that pick. Again, I think he could become a top running back. The safety in the 3rd round was a guy who's more talented than where he was picked. He has an ACL. He tore his ACL, and so he's not going to be ready for the start of the season probably. But who cares? They got great value there. Eason in the 4th round. Again, a guy who was the number 1 QB coming out of high school, has maybe the best arm in the draft. He's got prototypical size. He can go into a situation where he can learn from a great culture and a really competitive guy like Phillip Rivers. All of a sudden to be able to go into that for a 4th round pick. There's very, very little risk for the Colts. So I give them an A+. The worst draft is who was your worst draft, Judah?
Oh, definitely
Chargers.
The Chargers?
Yeah.
For Herbert. He's still not a fan of Herbert.
Okay.
Both their picks.
So my worst draft is going to be, I'm going to say Philadelphia. I'm going to say Philadelphia, not because I hate Hurts, but because it's just a weird fit. And I think in the first round, they kind of got caught in no man's land on needing a receiver. They probably should have traded up to get CeeDee Lamb. And if they weren't going to do that, then trade back if you could and get somebody else. They took Jalen Reagor. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Jalen Reagor turns out to be the best receiver out of this draft. I particularly don't really care for him that much. I think there's a lot of risk there. So I didn't like that pick. And then they followed it up with Hurts. Whereas, again, they could have, there's so many different things they could have done with that pick. So I think at least with the Packers, even though the Packers are doing, some weird stuff, I get the running back thing. If they're going to move on from Aaron Jones after this year, I get the thing with Love. If you think he's the guy and that he can be the future of the team, I get it. Whereas with the Eagles, I think not only did their decisions not particularly make sense, but the ceiling for them there is not the same type of ceiling that is for a team like the Packers. So, so that's my best and worst. I also think San Francisco did a really great job with their draft too. So they've gotten scarier.
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna give the Bears a B-. I mean, we have Khalil Mack, so we don't need a 1st round pick, I guess. It's fine. We got a tight end, our 10th one apparently, and works for me. We got a think it was a linebacker next, so I'm okay. Or cornerback. Sorry, we got a cornerback. I'm fine with our draft. I give us a B. It's not great, or B-. It's not great. It's not bad. It's perfectly fine, perfectly passable. We did what we needed to do. Best draft. I'm actually going to give this one to Miami, because they're the team that I've seen so far that had problems and they're fixing them. They got Tua. They got a great tackle in the 1st round. They also got a great cornerback in the 2nd round. They traded down for that. They got another tackle in the 2nd round, and they've also had a defensive tackle, a safety, and they got Solomon Kindley out of Georgia. So I'm a fan of that pick. So I really, really like what the Dolphins have done, because they've got like a 3-year plan going on at this point. I'm happy with what the Dolphins did. I think the Colts had a great 2nd round, especially, and I like Eason's pick a lot. But for the sake of being different, I will say Miami Dolphins. I think they've done a great job, and it's honestly ironic because I'm wearing a Dolphins jersey right now. So
we see your bias. We see your bias.
All right, so I'll go Miami. Worst, I'm gonna also go Eagles, and I think this is partially because I don't think a lot of the teams have had a bad draft per se. I think a lot of the teams have done a really good job about either fixing problems or taking their guy. It just confuses me because they have a lot of problems on defense, and I'm okay with the Jalen Reagor pick. No matter what the Eagles subreddit says, I'm okay with that. But what I don't get is Hurts and Wentz, and you still don't know what you're going to do on offense. I'm not sure how much I trust the Eagles' O-line. Their defense has a lot of holes in it, like the fearsome defense from 2018. The secondary is not great, even though they made moves in the offseason, minimal moves. I'm not a fan. I'll go Philly. I'll still give them like a D because I don't think it's terrible. It's not the absolute worst, but I'm not a huge fan either. So I'll give them a D, a Bears a B minus. I'm going to give the Dolphins an A for the sake of being different. So I'll go, I'll say them. That's my best, worst.
The Falcons are now on the clock, so we'll see if we get any Jake Fromm movement here.
All right. I think that might be a good one to finish on, you think maybe? Atlanta?
Yeah, probably. I think probably so because I am curious to see, since they kind of have that history there, if they'll go that route.
Mm-hmm. Especially since you get to keep them in Georgia as well. So
yeah, they and I think part of the reason they do that is try to appeal to the fan base. I mean, Georgia is a college football state. Yeah. And so they have a hard time. Kind of, winning over a fan base that just cares first and foremost about Georgia football, not Atlanta. Here it is. Let's see.
Yeah. No, Thomas H. I hope you're watching.
They took Jalen Hawkins, a safety from California.
I think that's a safe pick.
They're Keanu Neal has had a lot of just season-ending injuries one after another, so they always need safety help. But I don't know. Maybe Fromm will be around there for them. They may have another chance in the 5th round. But
So I'll say this: how far do you think Fromm falls? Let's say that. How far do you think he falls? How many rounds?
I think he's gone by the end of the 5th round, but I mean that's still like as compared to what people were thinking that he could be, like potentially a day 2 pick, like a 2nd round pick. That's a rough slide, and the guys who fall this far, the tough thing for them is not just the loss of money. It's that they're receiving, but it's the team's lack of investment in them. So that, when you're down, this far, the team has virtually no investment in you. And so they are free to move on at any time. Whereas if you're a top pick, there's more incentive for them to keep giving you chances and just try to make it work out. Yeah. So this is another thing that makes it tougher for Eason and Fromm.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting because Pittsburgh's on the clock, so I think it's curious to see. I mean, I don't think that they take him because their pick just is in. But, I mean, Pittsburgh's going to need a plan because Mason Rudolph is not the answer, and neither is Duck Hodges. And Ben Roethlisberger is not getting younger, no matter how many years Madden calls him Roethlisberger. Either way.
They better hope that he stays healthy because they did not do anything to Fromm is still there. They could maybe they could take
a weird fit, don't you think?
It would be polar opposites. It would be of course you got to think too. This is the team that ended up with Duck Hodges, who can barely throw the ball. Eventually in place of Roethlisberger last year, so Jake Fromm would be a better fit than Duck Hodges. But
it would be it would signal a complete culture change.
It would a lot. I would say.
Would it? I don't know. How do you mean?
I don't know. Sorry,
the
you guys.
Kind of leader he is would to me would signal that they're trying to get away from these bad boy rough guys into more intelligent, clean football players.
Well, but really, I mean having those guys has seemed, I guess, maybe from an organizational standpoint, although I don't know. It's the Rooneys that have owned the Steelers, I think, and they're kind of like one of those first families of the NFL. That Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph thing has always seemed like a weird fit to me, not just for the organization, for owners like the Rooneys, but for a blue collar place like Pittsburgh. Like, it seems like to me, Jake Fromm would be the exact kind of guy that you would want to have in a place like Pittsburgh. So you're right that it would be a change from what they've had, but it seems to me like it would be,
fit in with
better,
surrounding culture.
Right. So I don't know, but man, we saw Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges last year, and it was
a mess.
They don't need to be probably on an NFL roster. Neither one of them on an NFL roster. Again, this is the hilarious part. Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges are on NFL rosters. Cam Newton and Jameis Winston are not.
Ugh.
All right, guys, we got to cut it short. And by short, I mean, it's been 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
We've provided a lot of draft content this week.
Oh, yeah.
Nearly 4 hours, 2.5, and then nearly 2 more. So we've given like 8.5 hours of draft content this week.
That is a lot of content, but a lot of people are. I noticed. You know why? Because this is like the first sports thing that we've had in months.
Mm-hmm.
A month or two.
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of people are like just talking so much about the draft, whereas like I don't ever remember even caring about it this much.
Yeah. And honestly, I think I've enjoyed this format more than having it in a location, like seeing inside people's homes and their families standing around. I have enjoyed the home virtual draft more than I did the in-person drafts.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. And Thomas H, to finish us off, says he seems like every Falcons pick is always a reach, and their 2 picks in this round had 6th and 7th round draft grades. That may be true, but they're filling positions that they really need, which I think is important.
Yeah, I have mixed. I've never been impressed with. I haven't been impressed with their drafting. I'm not sure ever. Yeah. Every time they move on to somebody else, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it'll be better, because they had Rich McKay when they brought in Rich McKay, and then they moved on to him to Dimitroff, and then Dimitroff had to start ceding some power and authority to Dan Quinn, and then we thought Dan Quinn was going to get replaced, and so they can't ever seem to quite. I think they do always end up kind of reaching for some guys a lot of times, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But
I'm gearing up. So I'll be moving to North Carolina soon, and I'm gonna have to. I'm just gonna continue to be a Packers fan. But I was thinking, what team? It's not gonna be. It might be the Panthers, but what team am I gonna enjoy? Sort of getting into the culture in the South, and I'm thinking it might be the Falcons.
I would just advise against
Thomas
that.
H, you converted
it. My old Falcons fan seat is probably still empty. I don't know that it's been filled by anybody. So if you want to just slide right on into that, it's been empty since about 2000. Well, I guess we're going on a decade now since about.
Wow.
But yeah. So if you, man, I don't know. I can't do that. I can't go back to that again. No.
I'm a big Gurley fan. I've always loved Matt Ryan. I think I could get down, and you guys have sort of won me over with the whole Ridley. Although I have to say, I was a Ridley fan before you guys were Ridley fans. But
were you? We college football.
I've never loved Julio. I've never loved to hate somebody more than Julio, though.
Yeah, you should give it a year or so. Give it because give it a year, because that way you can kind of start to see what happens with Jordan Love in Green Bay, and maybe you want to.
I'm not talking about jumping ship.
Yeah,
I'm talking about
secondary,
my side team.
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But maybe okay. So but still, like I would say, give it a year, even just from the standpoint of we don't know how good or bad Carolina will be. We don't know where they'll be drafting next year. Teddy Bridgewater is not the long-term solution. Maybe they end up taking Trevor Lawrence. And, Lawrence is a Georgia boy who went to South Carolina and maybe ends up in North Carolina. So that's a kind of a
tank for Trevor. Yeah.
Tank for Trevor. Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
I would give it a year. I think they're going to have a hard time out tanking Jacksonville. But maybe, but I would wait and see, because I would feel better about the Panthers long-term prospects than I would about the Falcons, because Arthur Blank has a hard time firing people. See, Tepper has no trouble firing people.
Okay.
In Carolina.
See, the interesting thing, Judahbuddha, about Carolina is that you'll find like a divide, which Thomas H brings up in the comments. There's like a gap with the older generation of North Carolina being almost all Redskins and Falcons fans, Redskins and Cowboys fans, and then the younger generation being Panthers fans because they didn't have a team for so long. Yeah. So it's going to be.
I remember. I'm from North Carolina. I know all this stuff, and it's why I'm not a Carolina fan. But
so Thomas H says, "Have fun with the Redskins fans in North Carolina."
Yeah, Redskins, man.
All right, we got to go. I got another podcast. Jared and I have another podcast.
Yeah,
AJ, we got to get you on to the
love your podcast. Go.
All right, we'll taco to you guys later.
All right,
and I mean,
Let's just end the video. I'm just hitting the button.
See you Tuesday night.
There we go. See you Tuesday night.